Hello everybody and welcome to Skrrt Garage. My name is Connor and today I have another DIY video for you. What I'm going to be doing today is wrapping or tinting, whatever you want to call it, the rear taillights and also the rear reflectors. Now I think this looks fantastic. I've done it on almost all of my other cars and it's pretty simple to do. So what I'm going to do today is show you guys how with a DIY. I'm going to talk you through which tint I use and why I like it. And with that guys, let's get this video started. Okay guys, we are back, and before I get too far into this video, do me a kindness. If you like seeing DIY videos, if you want me to keep making them on my cars, please give this video a big old thumbs up. Also subscribe if you are new. And before I get too far into the actual DIY, I also want to talk a little bit about tinting, the actual material that you will use before you begin this process. I have to be honest guys, I'm not a professional wrapper or tinter. However, I have done this a lot on pretty much every car I've ever owned. And in that process, I've bought a lot of different brands. Almost all of them on Amazon, a lot that are not on Amazon, on just random online websites. And the material you use is crucial guys. It can make or break the experience for you. It can be really frustrating and time consuming if you have a hard to use material. So I'm going to quickly talk about what you want to look for when you do buy a material. First and foremost, get the shade that you like. Make sure that it's the right hue and value for the job that you will be doing. I'm going to be using a light smoke. I'm going to be doing so because there's already a little bit of black inside of the taillight and I don't want to overdo it. On the bottom, the rear reflectors, this is a all black car and I think that the red kind of adds some visual width to the car, so I don't want to completely black it out. I just want to do a light smoke so that the reflecting aspect of those reflectors still works and you can still see a little bit of the red popping through. Hopefully maintain that visual width that it adds to the all black car. Now back onto the material, the kinds of properties that you want to be looking for when buying a material is you want it to be easily workable. You don't want something that's going to stick to everything and be just a nightmare to adapt, especially when you're working on tricky taillights. The M2 really isn't too bad, but there are some taillights and headlights that are very difficult to work on. So you want it to be able to stretch and mold a little bit without deforming and delaminating and looking terrible after. So what I like to use is this. It's called Lux. On my endless quest of trying to find the perfect material, this one does it for me. If you guys have found a different material that you like using, that's totally fine with me. These tips and tricks to do this tint job will work for any material that you have. This is just the easiest for me. I found that this brand, when you get it hot, you can stretch it a little bit and it doesn't recoil as soon as the sun hits the car. It holds up very well to the elements, cold, hot, being outside all day. It does not deform or recoil. So I really like this stuff. I can't recommend it enough. If you want to know the exact shade and brand, I have the link in the description below. Check it out. Again, if you don't want to and you found a material that's best in your hands, go for it. I have no problem with that as well. So with that guys, we're going to start with the preparation now. We're going to get everything cleaned up, taped off, and I'm going to show you that because it's also almost just as important as the material itself. So with that, let's get started. Okay, first things first, just spray some soap and water onto the taillight, and what you'll do now is just generally clean it. I would even do a couple inches around the taillight, that way your painter's tape can adhere well. Then take some alcohol prep spray and spray the taillight, that way the tint will have a good surface to bond to. This stuff comes with the kit, so don't worry about having to go out and find it. Now I've slowed this part down, that way you guys can see it a little clearer. I want you to kind of squeegee or wedge the tape in between the taillight and the bumper, and then just go ahead and lay it down. And I want you to do that all the way around the taillight because this gives you added protection when you go to cut the taillight tint away from your taillight itself. This is probably the longest step when preparing to tint your taillights, but it's definitely worth it, and I would highly recommend that you guys do it. Okay, a few of the things that you're going to need to get this job done is, of course, the tint, a squeegee, some painter's tape, and these right here. These are well, first off, a blade and a few pry tools that are used to press in between where the tape is, the masking tape, and where the taillight is. You want to tape that in because it's going to allow you to get a clean cut when you cut the tint off. Then grab a measuring tape and measure the width and height. And I like to give myself 2 inches on both sides. So 2 inches extra on the width, 2 inches extra on the height. Then you can grab your tint once it has been cut to perfection and just kind of generally place it. That way you guys know exactly what your angulation is going to be. Alright, once you have your angulation completely set, then it's time to focus on the tougher part of the taillight job. And for me, that was definitely the center section where there is that kind of rib in the middle of the taillight. It's indented, and so you really kind of have to focus on that first. Ideally, whenever you're doing any sort of tint, not just the taillights, but anything, you want to get as much of the taillight tint adhered without using heat, if at all possible. So what I'm doing here is not using any heat. I'm just laying it in there completely flat, adapting it to that indented portion. And once I have that completely done, I can then very easily get the top and bottom on the other sides of that indented part of the taillight. So once you get this step done, go ahead and lay the full tint over on the other side. And really, once you get that indented portion done, all you have to do is just kind of squeegee down and then also squeegee back up, and you can really move pretty quickly from this step going forward. As you can see here, I've rounded the corner. I'm just making a couple final touches on the bottom. Once you get to this stage, you're going to pull a little bit on the tint and then press into the seam or the junction, whatever you want to call it, between the taillight and the body, and do that until you can work out any last little bubbles or striations. Now this is the time where you can really grab the heat gun and just blast it. Make sure it really adapts well, get into the cracks, press it in there and hold, and then you're just about ready to cut. But before we cut off the excess, you gotta get a, outside view of what it looks like comparatively to the standard OEM light. Alright, you definitely want to take your time here, but now it has come time to cut the remaining tint that is left on the taillight. Take your time, always cut toward the taillight. Don't ever cut towards the body, and you should leave no marks, and it shouldn't be an issue. Once you have that taken care of, now is the time to grab a heat gun, and whatever residual tint is left over, you're going to really blast it, get it pretty hot, and then you're going to press it into the seams of the taillight. Once you successfully walk all the way around the taillight and get it all adhered, you should be ready to go. Okay, now we're going to move on to the rear reflector. This one is a lot easier. Just take your pre-cut tint, try to squeegee it on as flat as possible, and if you can, work up into the little cracks and crevices there. Then take the heat gun and really get this one nice and hot. We know it's already adhered very well. Grab the squeegee and really press into the, junction between the reflector and the bumper. This sometimes can already cut to leave your job a lot easier when you grab the X-Acto. But again, remember, grab the X-Acto knife, and when you're cutting, always cut towards the item that you're going to be, tinting. If you cut towards the bumper, it's really easy to nick the bumper, so cut and lean your blade towards the reflector the entire time you're doing this. Once that is done, you can just grab it easily and pull it right off. Then take the painter's tape off and you are done. Okay guys, I just want to make a quick update video on the tint itself. It has been holding up very nicely. It has been extremely hot here in Oklahoma these last few weeks with the heat index up to like 108. And still, all the while, this tint has looked really, really good. I've washed the car a few times, I've parked out in the sun every day for the last few weeks, and I've had no issues with any of it wrinkling or peeling back or having any problems. It has also held up really nicely in the cold weather as well. So if you're worried about longevity, I wouldn't be. This has held up really nicely. The one other thing I'd like to point out while I have the car here and I've already finished it is I'll point out that I've already mentioned it in the DIY video, but try to start from the inside of the trunk going out. Do that please, because if you start over here on this nice flat surface and then you try to mold the tint around, you're gonna have a really difficult time getting these ledges. Like there's a little bar that runs down the middle of it that's indented into the taillight, and it's really hard to do if you don't start going inside out. One more time, I'll let you see what it looks like with the tail lights on. I think it looks really, really good, and it's actually not that dark. It makes me want to actually do it to the front of the car as well, because I have already put this style of tint on my headlights before when I used to have an F80 M3, and it looked really, really good. Now bear in mind that when you do put on your headlights, you do lose, 10 to 15% of visibility at night. So if you already have super dark windows, or you're worried about losing that visibility because your eyesight isn't that great, or whatever the case may be, just remember those things, okay? But with that, guys, I think this looks really good, and I'm gonna sign off here. Don't forget to give this video a big old like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. Have a great day. Peace.